All rise. The Honorable Supreme Court Justice Thomas Kilbride presiding.
Please be seated. Good afternoon. Can people hear me? Happy to be here. My name is Tom Kilbride, a member of the Illinois Supreme Court, and I want to thank Chief Judge Vansel, wherever there you are, and colleagues of the Ninth Circuit for the privilege to preside over this ceremony today. Our first order of business is for Chief Judge Vansel to give us some remarks.
I'll just give them from here if you can all hear me. First of all, I want to welcome everyone to the investiture ceremony and congratulate Judge Sutton on her appointment and to her family. And this is a very special day. I want to thank all of the judges that have attended today. It shows the teamwork that we all have with each other in our circuit, and especially a large turnout when we have court going on in the other 5 counties. Also to other judicial partners that are in the crowd, we have circuit clerks, public defenders, state's attorneys, deputy clerks, just all kinds of judicial partners, probation officers. I'm sure I've left some of our partners out, but we want to thank you as well for being here today. A special thank you to Justice Kilbride for presiding today and for the appointment process. And having been a part of it, it was a very thorough process. And when I made an urgent request to fill it, you acted quite promptly and filled that position for us. I do want to recognize the judges that are here today. We have Circuit Judge Raymond Cavanaugh, Circuit Judge Heidi Benson, Circuit Judge William Ponson, Circuit Judge Scott Shiplett, Circuit Judge Thomas Ewing, retired judges Steve Evans, retired Judge Richard Gambrell, and retired Appellate Justice Kent Slater. And I don't want to leave out retired Circuit Judge from the 8th Circuit, Emily's father, Judge Sheeran. And so thank all of you for being here today. And Justice Kilbride, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you. Next, we'll have some remarks from Judge Mark Schrein as he introduced himself to me as the father of the bride.
May it please the court, Justice Kilbride, Chief Judge Vansel, fellow judges, court staff of the Ninth Circuit, clerks, reporters, staff. To say I'm a proud father today would be a huge understatement. When Judge Mathers called me and said, "Proud Papa," and nothing could be more accurate. Kate and I were blessed, my wife right there, and her mother from Belleville, Eileen. So we've got a wonderful family here, and I know some sisters are showing up shortly. But we're blessed with 5 wonderful girls, 5 daughters. They've all had wonderful careers. But to see our eldest, Emily, appointed to the bench in the Ninth Circuit is truly special. I know that Justice Kilbride and the individuals on his screening committee deliberate carefully over all the applicants, and there are many, and they are many well qualified, and they're very careful in the appointment. Father's bias, though, I'm extremely confident of Emily's legal abilities. I mentioned that I would hire any of my 5 daughters to work for me, but they're all smart enough that they would never work for me. She has a great character, great disposition, and a tremendous work ethic, so I know that she's going to serve with distinction. I've attended a number of these induction ceremonies over the years. I've been retired quite a few years already, and it's always been an honor to participate in these, but this is remarks as a father of a new judge that is very distinct. Tradition at these inductions are to offer some advice, so you're stuck. You should have pled your case to Justice Kilbride for me not to be on the agenda. You know, growing up, I oftentimes relied on Kate, your mother, to give the important advice, and so I don't often have the advice to offer to my offspring, but On this, I think I've got some qualifications because I did do it for a couple decades. The black robe. We don't wear these because we're special. We wear these because they're a sign of our being a neutral magistrate. When Judge Evans and I both did some mediations in retirement, I would always remind people at mediator the same thing. We're neutral. It's going to be a bit of a transition. You've gone from being an advocate in the adjudicatory process, and you did serve 5 years on the appellate, as an appellate law clerk, so you tasted the position where you take no sides, you keep an open mind, you hear the arguments, interpret the law, apply the facts to the law. But you've got to be consistently mindful going forward as you transition to not being an advocate. I know there's going to be times where you'll hear a case, hear a lawyer, and something will pop into your head questioning that perhaps, but I would suggest that you know that the attorneys probably know their case better than you, and to try to do what we do with the jurors and to keep an open mind and not make assumptions. Being a judge is not an easy life. At the end of the days, it's pretty clear that you will make people routinely unhappy. I always said, except for weddings and adoptions, that's kind of our job. And if you're really good at being a judge, you sometimes make both sides unhappy. And it can be difficult to be diplomatic, but in trying to think of what I wanted to say to you today and to give you some advice that I think actually would work, and I have to confess, I learned a lot of these things from failures. So we learn more from our mistakes sometimes than we do from our successes. And one thing I learned, it was doing a high volume court, is the people out there would be very disappointed when the ruling would go against them. And so I would start off anytime I had to rule from the bench with the practice of saying words to the effect that I know that they are going to disagree with my ruling. I know that they're going to be disappointed, but that I did listen to their arguments. And I would do this in majority of the cases, and it served me very well. And I know that your mediation training as a family mediator will serve you well in trying to communicate and be an effective communicator. As for advice, looking around the room and what Chief Judge Vansel hinted to, most judges in your circuit are going to get a variety of assignments. You kind of told me a little bit of what you're going to be doing. I was appointed probate judge my first year by Chief Judge Dittmeyer at the time, and I said, Judge, I've never had a probate case. And he said, you'll learn, and I did. So it's going to be difficult to be the master of all the areas of the law that you're assigned. But unlike the practice of law, you won't have your partners to bounce things off of, but please don't hesitate to pick up the phone and talk to your fellow judges. They will not think less of you. In fact, it'll lead to great camaraderie with the judges and build relationships more quickly. It'll also help ease the sense and feeling of isolation, because there will be times where you'll feel very alone in this job. Our citizens sometimes get a very skewed impression of how the courts function. Unfortunately, they learn a lot from TV, the movies. Sometimes the case that's in the newspaper that's an aberration is some weird case that maybe happened, but the facts aren't all known. And in that vein, you're going to have an important obligation as you sit on the bench, that with every member of the public that come before you, to leave a positive impression on how the courts really do work and function. Except for jury duty and maybe a traffic violation, most members of the public won't spend much time in the courts. I remember having a civil jury trial that lasted about a week, and I had seen the particular juror that was a foreperson out months later, and I asked her about her experience. And I was so pleased because she said, yes, she was very anxious about serving. She said her experience was nothing like she had seen in the movies or on TV. And she said from time to time, things could be boring, but she kind of knew, due to the recesses and the things that had to be dealt with from the court's standpoint. But she came away very impressed with the process, and that was so pleasing to hear. She thought the trial was very fairly conducted, and the interesting thing is she felt all the jurors were very thoughtful about their job, their oaths, and did their best to reach a proper verdict. And I sometimes want to remind people in the public about that because we tend to hear about the oddball results or cases, and in reality, day in, day out, we've got a system that's, if it were baseball, they'd be batting 370, 380, or 970, 980 as far as a batter. It works very well day in and day out. Next, always be mindful that no matter what may be at stake, a criminal civil case, a small claims, a traffic case, those cases are very important to the litigant. And the positive example that you set as you conduct your courtroom will have that convey great confidence to all the members of the public. Sleeplessness. This is one where actually your mother suggested I add this. It may sound odd, but I was glad when I was a judge for those years to lose sleep over some of the decisions or sentences that I handed down. Now the argument is you should separate your work from your home life, leave it at the courthouse, but I found it difficult, if not impossible, to do. I personally feel a judge should be bothered by their decisions, and I predict you're going to take some cases home, you're going to struggle with them, and I would say embrace those struggles, and you'll be a better judge for having them. And at an early time as a judge, I had a waitress at a restaurant come up to me. She took my hand, and she put something in my hand, folded it, and said, 6 months ago, I hated your guts. And of course, there was a huge pause, and I'm trying to, where did I see this lady? What do I know about this lady? I opened the hand, and it was a AA 90-day sobriety coin. And she said she couldn't believe that I'd given her some weekends in the Adams County Jail as part of her probation, but she said it was the wake-up call that she needed to work on her difficulties with alcohol. I recalled later that she had a young son, and I had actually called down to the jail on Saturday morning to ask how she was doing. I think that was okay, not unethical, but I was that worried about it. Another tip, make friends, especially with your clerks and your court reporters. I think 24 years, this may be my third row I'm retired with, but if you'd seen my first row when I started, there'd be some finger marks right about here. And my clerk was Renita Peters, and she was known to just grab it and tug. And sometimes I would forget that there are fines to assess. Maybe I didn't check my checklist and I didn't give appeal rights, things that we're constantly reminded to be careful and be certain that we do. And the same thing with the court reporters. They were a huge friend. They'd sometimes, after a ruling was typed by me, they would take it and check it over very carefully. Not only do they do their jobs, but they help you do your job that much better. Because the Illinois Supreme Court's got an excellent system set up to work with new judges, you're in good hands. So you have a mentor assigned, Judge Benson, that's no secret. It's a wonderful system. They have a new judge seminar where by Wednesday of the week-long seminar, your head will feel it's going to explode. They have education conferences, just like the lawyers are required every other year, a certain number. And so you're going to hit the ground running, I have no doubt, as a new judge. And of course, I know you very well, and I have no doubt that you'll be a sponge and you will soak up all this information. I also know your work ethic and that you will spend the days and hours necessary to prepare every time you take the bench. So I'm going to take a minute as a proud dad and tell you about this woman's work ethic. She finished college in 3 years at the top of her class. She did so while playing varsity tennis on scholarship. She held down a job as a bank teller at the same time. She finished law school driving from Quincy to St. Louis U School of Law with our oldest grandson in tow, and had 2 more children while clerking for the appellate court in the 4th Judicial District. She did it with hard work and grace, and she did it because she's a lifelong learner and will be a very good judge. One more tidbit. her dad. When possible, end any sentencing hearings by giving defendants some hope, no matter how dire the situation. Over time, I developed the habit of telling defendants that I was hopeful they would change their past behavior and we would not see them again in the court system. They had to suffer some consequences for their criminal conduct, but we all hoped we would not see them back. Criminal sentencing is not just about punishment. It's more about changing behavior. And the focus on changing behavior has served me well over the years. The last time I voted, one of the election judges was an individual I'd sentenced on more than one occasion. He was in his late 50s at this point, and when he saw me, his words were, "I bet you didn't expect to see me doing this." He was rightfully proud, and in spite of his many transgressions in the past, he had grown, changed his behavior, and was a productive member of society. And isn't that what we all want? So Judge Sutton, as you embark on this new chapter of your career, your mother and I want to repeat how much we love you and how proud we are of you. I want to thank Justice Kilbride again for giving you this opportunity to serve as a public servant in the 9th Judicial Circuit, and I know that you will not disappoint and that you will serve with great distinction.
Thank you, Judge Shuri. I know that would have been difficult as a father to give those remarks, and I know you're proud. I just want to offer a few comments. The job, the process of filling these vacancies is something I've done as a member of the court now for almost 20 years. It's one of, and I say one of, the most difficult and challenging aspects of my job. It's difficult because in the end analysis, there's only one person that can be selected. And as a father of 3 daughters who are all adults now, with their mothers urging as they were growing up, they were always reminding me, "Dad, don't forget the women." So I say we might have had a slight edge in this process. But I do think the diversity on the bench, whether it's race, creed, or color, and gender, is important to our court system. So I think Emily has a solid background. Emily has the intellect, the ability to do the job, and I believe she has the heart to do what is right. And to conclude my remarks, something that Judge Shuring said was about process and about fairness, and the commitment I asked of Emily, and I've asked of every judge I've ever appointed, was to make sure that they do their best when the litigants and the attorneys walk in the courtroom, that they feel a sense of fairness, that they're going to be heard fairly, the law is going to be interpreted and applied fairly. And at the end, whether they win or lose, they'll know that they had a fair shot at justice. So, Emily, are you ready to take the oath? Please repeat after me. I, Emily Shuring Sutton,
I, Emily Shuring Sutton,
do solemnly affirm
do solemnly affirm
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and that I will faithfully discharge
and that I will faithfully
the
discharge
duties of judge
the duties of judge
of the Circuit Court for the 9th Judicial Circuit
of the Circuit Court of the 9th Judicial Circuit
of Illinois,
of Illinois,
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Congratulations. I don't have my key pass to get back up. You may offer your remarks.
I am so pleased that everyone here took the time to come in the middle of the afternoon on this really important and just overwhelming day. This was not necessarily something that I anticipated ever happening in my lifetime, but it means so much to me to be able to serve. And I did make the promise to Justice Kilbride that I would do so as fairly as possible. I will do so with integrity. I will do so with respect to everyone who comes before me. I think most of you who are here know that about me, but I'm going to prove it to you. And it means so much to me to have all of you here, my husband and my parents and some siblings. And my grandmother made the trip. I'm her oldest granddaughter, and so I'm glad she could be here today to see this. And I hope that you'll all join us to celebrate across the street at the Art Center in just a few minutes.
Very good. Well, back to it. Just one minor item of business. I remind you that you and I both need to sign your oath before you leave. Otherwise, we're concluded, and thank you for being with us today.